The hospital lobby hummed with a sterile urgency, fluorescent lights casting a cold glow over the gleaming floor. Nurses bustled past, their clipped conversations laced with exhaustion, but one stood apart. Clara, a weary nurse with a frayed scrub top clinging to her small frame, stood shivering by the entrance. A thin layer of moisture clung to her skin, remnants of a long shift that had bled into the night. Across the lobby, a group of doctors in crisp white coats laughed, their voices rising above the mechanical beeping of machines. They were untouchable islands of power in a sea of chaos, exchanging banter like currency. One, Dr. Hargrove, a towering figure with a polished bravado, leaned back against the counter, his eyes scanning the room with an indifferent detachment. And there was Clara, her breath visible in the cool air, her hands buried deep in her pockets, fighting the chill creeping into her bones. She had done all she could, yet here she was, invisible to those who had the power to ease her discomfort. Then, a figure emerged from the shadows of the bus stop outside, a single dad named Eric, his own burdens etched into the lines of his face. He paused, instinctively drawn to the scene unfolding before him, recognizing the injustice of it all. With a resolute stride, he stepped forward, the determination in his gaze igniting a spark of hope. "You're coming with me," he said, breaking the tension like a sudden crack of thunder, intent on ushering Clara into the warmth of the world beyond the sterile walls. Eric stood under the flickering streetlight, the chill of the night wrapping around him like an old, familiar cloak. His worn jacket bore the scars of countless winters, a testament to the struggles he faced as a single father raising his daughter, Sophie, alone. The light from the hospital spilled onto the pavement, illuminating the lines of worry etched into his forehead. Every crease seemed to tell a story, the sleepless nights, the hurried meals, the moments he had to sweep his own dreams aside for the sake of a child who deserved more than he could give. He had once been a man with aspirations, a sensitive soul drawn to art and the narratives woven through colors and strokes. But life, with its relentless tide, washed those dreams away. When his wife had left, taking with her the laughter and warmth of their small home, Eric made a choice. He would not let the darkness claim his daughter. Instead of despair, he forged a path in service, taking up work as a delivery driver, balancing his time between odd jobs that barely kept them afloat. He learned the rhythm of resilience, turning sacrifice into an art form, a silent act of love that carried him forward. As he waited at the bus stop, his gaze fell on Clara, the nurse shivering at the hospital entrance. There was a flicker of recognition. Her exhaustion mirrored his own, both of them caught in a cycle of giving, receiving little in return. He watched her for a moment, her shoulders hunched against the cold, her body language screaming of a fight she was losing. It struck him then, the reality that in a world so busy and demanding, even those meant to heal could feel invisible, neglected by the very system they upheld. Clara felt the weight of her title as a nurse bearing down on her like an unwelcome shroud. The night stretched into a blur of critical decisions and care for those she barely knew. Beneath the urban veneer of her disciplined success lay a woman who had buried her own wounds deep, sacrificing her dreams of a family for the sake of her patients. She had trained hard, her fierce dedication carving a path through the ranks of the hospital. Yet, with every life she saved, the ache within her heart grew louder, a reminder of the warmth she had long forsaken for the sterile embrace of duty. In the mirror of the hospital's gleaming tiles, Clara often saw the reflection of her ambitions. She was good at what she did, her hands skilled and steady, her mind sharp. Yet the accolades failed to fill the hollowness that had settled into the marrow of her bones. Each recognition felt like a chain, pulling her deeper into a role she could barely relate to outside of her scrubs. The cold lobby echoed those sentiments, each laugh from the doctors a reminder that they belonged to a world she had long admired from afar, yet one that remained just out of reach. As Eric's determination shifted into action, he stepped forward, the uncertainty in his chest transforming into clarity. "You're coming with me," he said, the authority in his voice cutting through the sterile air. It wasn't a demand, it was an invitation, a subtle acknowledgement that they were both deserving of warmth. In that moment, Clara, caught in the haze of her own fatigue, struggled to comprehend the kindness reflected in this stranger's gaze. Was it possible that someone saw her, even for a fleeting second? In that brief exchange, the invisible wall separating them began to melt away. To Eric, Clara was not just a nurse but a fellow fighter, someone who had walked a similar path of sacrifice. And to Clara, Eric represented the raw authenticity she had lost somewhere between shifts and stress. Suddenly, the sterile walls of the hospital felt suffocating, each fluorescent beam pressing upon her spirit like a weight. As they moved toward the exit, Eric offered his warmth in the simplest of gestures, his arm outstretched to accompany her into the night. Clara hesitated for just a heartbeat, her mind racing, wrestling with the instinct to refuse help, a conditioned response born of years spent serving others. Yet, deep down, she recognized this small act of connection, a moment to breathe outside the relentless rhythm of her own responsibilities. Together, they stepped into the cool night air, two weary souls seeking solace in a world that had all but forgotten the weight of the burdens they carried. And in that instant, with the faint sound of laughter fading behind them, hope flickered to life, not in grand gestures, but in simple humanity. As they stepped away from the hospital's glaring lights, the cool night air wrapped around them, momentarily easing the weight that both had carried. But the moment of connection was short-lived. Clara's mind whirled as they reached the bus stop, the neon glow illuminating an empty bench. She hesitated, her heart racing with the residual tension of the hospital and the responsibilities still lurking in the back of her mind. She had never been one to accept help, least of all from someone she didn't know. "I really can't," she said, voice shaking slightly. "I have to get back. There's a patient." "Listen," Eric interrupted, his calm voice slicing through her frantic thoughts. "I know you're busy. I get it. But you look like you need a moment, and for once, taking a break doesn't mean there's someone else who suffers. You've done enough for today." He stepped closer, lowering his tone. "And if it's about that patient, I can help." Her eyes narrowed, skepticism replacing her initial surprise. "Help? Doing what? You're not a doctor." Clara crossed her arms, the protective gesture proving a fortress against the kindness he had just offered. She was unwilling to admit it, but some part of her craved the warmth he extended. Still, she wouldn't allow vulnerability. "No, I'm not. But I am a father, and I've had my fair share of crises. You'd be surprised how much you can learn when the stakes are high." He shifted his weight, his hands resting at his sides, displaying an openness that contradicted her defensiveness. "I know how to keep a cool head when everything else is falling apart. Just like you, I take care of those I love." A flicker of doubt crossed her mind. Was this man truly capable of helping? Clara studied his weathered features and the faint lines around his eyes. Each crease hinted at stories untold, and for a moment, she imagined what sort of man he might be. Life had carved something deep into him, something that echoed her own resilience. "Is that so?" she challenged, trying to mask her curiosity. "And how exactly would you manage? You're just a delivery driver, right?" The words tasted bitter on her tongue. She had always held nurses in high regard, and here she was, facing a man whose life was a constant survival. But was any of it relevant? His expression shifted, an imperceptible tightening of his jaw revealing the shadows of unspoken struggles. "Just a delivery driver, yes. But I've delivered more than parcels. I've delivered hope to my daughter when it felt like the world was against us." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in, then continued, "I'm not here to take your job, Clara. I'm here to support you. Let me help, please." Her defenses wavered. For all her training, for all the nights spent saving lives, Clara had never learned the art of accepting kindness. Yet, standing on the precipice of indecision, she recognized something in Eric, an echo of resilience that mirrored her struggles. Maybe his simple offer carried more weight than she initially thought. "Okay," she finally relented, the words tumbling out like a hesitant sigh. "If you really think you can help, what do you suggest?" The sharpness in her tone dulled, revealing a flicker of openness. The night air hung heavy between them, filled with an unsteady promise. He smiled, a genuine warmth emerging in the gesture, igniting a sense of camaraderie. "Let's start with a plan. There are likely basic tasks you need help with, things that don't require a medical degree. I can make calls, coordinate shifts, whatever it takes. Sometimes, we just need an extra hand, even if it's only for a moment." A part of her resisted, unwilling to step back into the chaotic storm that was her life, yet another part acknowledged how compelling Eric's offer was. Each beat of her heart echoed in the stillness, resonating with an undeniable truth: being seen, even in the simplest of ways, might just be the solace she desperately needed. As they moved closer to collaboration, Clara found herself questioning what it meant to accept help without compromising her identity, stirring a renewed determination within. The bus stop's flickering light painted a surreal glow over Clara and Eric, illuminating the unsteady ground beneath their feet. As they settled onto the cold bench, the chill of the night air mingled with the warmth of a budding connection. A silence enveloped them, filled with the unspoken acknowledgement of their shared burdens. "Okay, so what's next?" Clara asked, her tone softer now, tinged with curiosity rather than skepticism. The palpable exhaustion still clung to her, but beneath it simmered a spark of hope. Eric turned toward her, his expression steady, as if he had been waiting for this moment, the opportunity to offer practical solutions rather than mere sympathy. "Let's break it down," he suggested, lifting his phone to pull up a notepad app. "What's the immediate need at the hospital? Is it paperwork, patient communication, or something else?" His approach was methodical, grounded in the practical experience of managing chaos, and it resonated with Clara's nursing instincts. Her brows furrowed as she considered. "It's mostly coordinating care for a few critical patients. And there's equipment shortage that needs to be addressed. The last thing we need right now is a delay in treatment, but the system is so bogged down," she trailed off, frustration creeping into her voice as she spoke about the familiar hurdles that often felt insurmountable. "Here's an idea," Eric interjected, taking cues from her expressions and the shadows of worry etched across her face. "Let's draft a message for your team. Simple bullet points about what resources are needed, prioritize them, and send it out. I can help you compose it." Clara's heart quickened. She rarely let anyone into her work life, but his suggestion felt like stepping onto a familiar path. "All right," she agreed, her voice steadier now. "I can give you the details, just follow my lead." They sat shoulder to shoulder, an unspoken camaraderie blossoming in the space between them. As she outlined the priorities, Eric typed with quick precision, listening intently, asking clarifying questions that showed not merely interest, but respect for her expertise. Their dynamic shifted, both embracing the idea that each brought something valuable to the table. "Now, let's think about the equipment needs," Eric proposed after sending the message. "If you give me the list, I can make calls to suppliers while you handle the immediate concerns at the hospital. You need to be in the unit, where you can provide care." The weight of his words settled warmly in Clara's chest. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to recognize her role, to encourage her to step back and focus on what truly mattered. They worked in tandem, Clara dictating while Eric dialed numbers, each conversation revealing layers of trust. With every ring and every connection, Eric's calm demeanor shone bright as he patiently reassured the suppliers, advocating for urgent needs with a practiced ease that Clara admired deeply. "You have a real knack for this," she remarked during a lull, an unexpected smile breaking through as she witnessed him in action. "Thank you," he replied without missing a beat, his focus unwavering. "I've learned a few things about getting things done when you have someone who needs a hand." Her heart swelled at his honesty. It was a rare treat, witnessing such genuine support. Minutes turned into an hour, the glowing digits of the bus schedule ticking away in the background, but time felt irrelevant as they collaborated. Clara found herself relaxed, her confidence bolstered by the successful exchanges. This simple act of working together felt transformative. The burdens and hurts they had both carried seemed lighter now, muddled through shared purpose. As Eric hung up from another successful call, he turned to Clara, his expression earnest. "You're incredible at this, you know? It's not just about saving lives, it's about how you navigate the challenges. You're making a real difference." For the first time in a long while, Clara felt seen, not just as a nurse but as a human being, meriting care and consideration. She cast her gaze away for a moment, caught off guard by the swell of emotion rising within her as a flicker of gratitude danced in her chest. As they both settled back into their roles, Clara whispered a quiet, "Thank you," wrapped in newfound respect for this man beside her. In that shared silence, fortified by their collaborative effort, she recognized that vulnerability was not a weakness, but rather a bridge to understanding, and perhaps, even friendship. The air between them shifted, each breath filled with unspoken promises, and as the shadows of the night deepened, the burden of neglect and isolation began to lift, replaced by an emerging warmth, one that spoke of hope born from the simple act of recognizing another's struggle. Eric leaned back against the cold bench, his thoughts trailing through the memories that shaped him. It wasn't always like this, with the sharp chill of winter biting at his skin and shadows elongating the weight of his days. There had been a time when laughter cascaded through his home like sunlight, filling every corner with warmth. He remembered a moment from a summer long past, when his wife, Melissa, had spun Sophie around in the backyard, giggling, her bright hair catching the light like a halo. Those were halcyon days, painted with the soft hues of innocence that felt a million lifetimes away now. But then life shifted like a cruel tide, sweeping away the familiar landscape he'd come to depend on. When Melissa left, it was as if the sun had been extinguished. The laughter faded, leaving behind echoes of heartache that rang louder than the silence that replaced them. Eric had stood on the precipice of despair, questioning everything that had once felt secure. The sudden vacuum of her absence left him grappling with feelings of inadequacy, of being abandoned rather than understanding the complexities that led her away. Regret clung to him like a heavy cloak. However, he had a choice to make. He could sink into that darkness, or he could rise for his daughter. Opting for resilience, he buried himself in working odd jobs while becoming Sophie's steadfast anchor. He took on deliveries, worked late-night shifts, and did everything he could to keep a semblance of stability for her. Days blurred together in a relentless loop of commitments, late-night homework sessions, and bedtime stories filled with magic. His own dreams slid to the side like discarded pages. Yet every time he saw the light in Sophie's eyes, every giggle that escaped her lips, he was reminded of the hope that flickered like a small flame amidst the shadows of his heart. As a father, Eric learned to value not just the survival of the body, but the nurturing of the spirit. He discovered that kindness could be a lifeboat in a turbulent sea. With each passing day, he honed the skill of listening, truly listening, to Sophie's dreams, her fears, and even her little triumphs. The transition from husband to single father was fraught with turmoil, but it made him acutely aware of the unspoken needs around him, including his own. He would stay up long nights, pouring his heart into painting again, trying to capture the colors of his sadness, blending them with the gleam of hope he dared to imagine. He cast a sideways glance at Clara, the nurse whose shivering frame echoed the long-forgotten echoes of his own struggles. She served the world tirelessly, and he could see in her weary expression the price of such dedication. It made him think of how easy it was to overlook one's own needs amidst the relentless calls of duty. He had fallen into that trap before, and it had nearly consumed him. As he listened to her talk about the patients, the paperwork, and the weight of responsibility, he recognized the light of passion dimmed by exhaustion. His heart ached for her, remembering how the fervor of his artistic spirit had been drowned in the tides of day-to-day survival. But Clara had a different kind of fire within her, a commitment that transcended common obligation. It was that same fire that had drawn him to her, igniting a sense of camaraderie. Yet, surrounded by fluorescent lights and the sterile environment of the hospital, he sensed how easily that fire could turn to ash, how neglect could steal away that brilliance. Were they both caught in a relentless cycle of caring for others while neglecting their own needs? It was an unspoken truth that hovered between them, a reality that both longed to escape. As she spoke about her patients, her voice filled with a mix of pride and weariness. A part of him wanted to offer her permission, to tell her that it was okay to take a step back, to reclaim parts of herself that she had sacrificed. Clara's world was marked by service and sacrifice, while his had morphed into survival and gentleness. In that stark contrast, he found a strange kinship, a fusion of their experiences that felt both nurturing and daring. Caught in his thoughts, Eric suddenly felt the weight of his own burdens lightened by the presence of someone who, despite her exhaustion, shared a vast ocean of compassion. He understood that vulnerability was an act of strength. Watching Clara navigate her own struggles brought clarity to his own. Perhaps she needed to recognize that accepting support didn't mean admitting defeat. It was a chance to breathe, to acknowledge her own worth beyond her title. In the silence that enveloped them, Eric shifted slightly closer, the cold of the bench fading with the warmth of connection. The night air was thick with unspoken understanding, and amid that, he saw in Clara a glimpse of her potential beyond her scrubs and the weight of her responsibilities. She had the strength to reclaim her life, just as he had done for Sophie, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of compassion towards herself. It wasn't about erasing the past, but rather embracing it, the loss, the pain, the brilliance renounced. With a newfound determination, Eric offered her a smile, an invitation not just to accept help, but to recognize that they were both worthy of healing. In that moment, as the distant sounds of the hospital faded into the background, they both began to ponder what it might mean to reclaim their lives, piece by piece, nurturing the light that had long been overshadowed by their burdens. They had found each other in this chaotic world, and perhaps together, they could navigate the delicate dance between caring for others and caring for oneself. The bus stop was bathed in an uneasy quiet, the flickering light above creating an unsettling rhythm that mirrored the chaos of the hospital just beyond its reach. Clara and Eric had found a momentary refuge in each other's company, their collaborative energy transforming what once felt burdensome into an optimistic exchange. But the fragile calm was shattered when a sudden commotion erupted nearby. A woman's voice pierced the night, frantic and shrill, demanding assistance as she cradled a child who had collapsed on the sidewalk. Without hesitation, Clara's instincts kicked in. She shot up from the bench, adrenaline surging through her veins, igniting the fierce dedication that defined her life as a nurse. "Stay here," she instructed Eric, ready to rush toward the scene. But he was already stepping forward, his resolve unshakable in the face of urgency. "No, I'm coming with you," he insisted firmly, a resolute determination in his eyes. This wasn't the old Eric, the one who often sat on the sidelines in fear or uncertainty. This was a man transformed, emboldened by the connection he'd forged with Clara, ready to step outside the limitations he had placed upon himself. He recognized that neglecting his own potential would no longer serve him or his daughter. The warmth of Clara at his side fanned the flames of courage within him, urging him to act. Together, they rushed to the scene. Clara knelt beside the child, a girl no older than 5, her ashen face glistening under the streetlight. Eric felt a flutter of panic at the sight, memories of Sophie's moments of vulnerability flashed before his eyes. But Clara's steady hands took over, her voice a calming balm amidst the chaos. "Stay back and give her some space," she called, her tone both authoritative and nurturing. Immediately, Eric stepped back, scanning the surrounding crowd, ensuring they followed her instructions. "Eric, can you call for help?" Clara instructed, without looking away from the little girl. "Tell them to send a medical team, now." He pulled his phone from his pocket, hands trembling slightly, but steadied his resolve as he relayed every detail to the operator. While he spoke, Clara checked the girl's pulse, whispering soothing encouragements, urging her to focus on her breathing. "Hang on, sweetheart. Help is on the way," she murmured, the weight of her own heartache blending with the urgency of the moment. In that instant, Clara understood the profound impact of immediacy not just in her professional life but in the deeper connections she had always sought. She felt the warmth emanating from Eric as they worked together, a solidarity igniting their shared human experience. When the paramedics arrived, Clara seamlessly transitioned into her professional persona, directing them with clarity and confidence. Eric watched in awe, seeing the nurse transform from a weary figure to a powerful advocate. In the midst of chaos, she held the girl's hand, a gesture filled with compassion that resonated deeply in his heart. This was the heart of what she did, what they both longed for: connection, healing, and hope. As the paramedics ushered the girl into their care, Eric turned to Clara, the weight of emotions flooding between them. "You were amazing," he breathed, his admiration palpable. "I didn't realize how powerful it could be to act like this." Clara met his gaze, her own heart swelling with understanding. "It's not about power," she replied softly. "It's about being there when it counts. You stood with me, and that made a difference. You were part of this." In that electrifying moment, the air shimmered with possibilities. Eric felt a stirring within himself, a shift that had begun to take root in the depths of his being. He could be more than just a delivery driver or a dad. He could embody the kind of presence that offered strength to others, just as Clara had done tonight. He would no longer hesitate to engage with the world around him, nor would he retreat into the shadows of his old life. As the sound of sirens faded into the distance, the night settled back into an uneasy quiet. Clara turned to Eric, her expression softening. "I need to go back, but I don't want to do it alone." It was not just a request, it was a shared understanding of vulnerability, a plea to bear the weight of their separate yet interconnected journeys. "Neither do I," Eric replied, his voice steady. They had stepped into a shared moment of courage, and it had ignited within them a burgeoning partnership. Together, they strolled back to the bus stop, their pace in sync, both transformed by the night's events, a nurse and a father, two weary souls pushing through the heart of their shared crisis, ready to embrace a future where they could lift each other up and fulfill their potential together. As they settled back on the bench, the night air no longer felt cold, instead, it wrapped around them, now thick with the warmth of their connection, and the promise of what lay ahead. The night air settled around Clara and Eric, wrapping them in the quiet comfort of shared understanding. The bus stop, once a mere way station, had transformed into a sanctuary of sorts, an oasis where two weary souls could catch their breath amid the relentless demands of their lives. As they sat together, Clara's fingers obsessively traced the chipped wood of the bench, feeling the worn surface beneath her hands, each groove telling a story of those who had come and gone. Eric watched her, sensing the weight of her thoughts, the way her shoulders seemed to sag ever so slightly as the adrenaline of their earlier rescue faded. It reminded him of the nights he spent by Sophie's bed, the silence heavy with unspoken fears, yet punctuated by the warmth of a hand held tightly in reassurance. Suddenly, a young boy raced past them, laughter bubbling from his lips as he chased after a stray dog. The joy in his eyes was pure, a fleeting moment of happiness that ignited something deeper within Eric's chest. He turned to Clara, just as she lifted her gaze to capture the boy's laughter, their expressions mingling in the glow of the streetlight, the shared recognition of life's fleeting beauty amidst their burdens. "There's something beautiful about that," Eric remarked softly, nodding toward the boy. Clara smiled, an echo of warmth spreading across her features, a rare moment of light breaking through the fog of her exhaustion. "Yeah," she replied quietly. "It's the little things." In that moment, Eric reached out, his hand brushing against the edge of hers, a silent gesture of solidarity, an understanding that they didn't have to navigate their struggles alone. The simple touch spoke volumes, conveying a promise of support and compassion amidst the chaos of their lives. As they exchanged a glance, one that lingered just a heartbeat longer than the last, Clara felt a flicker of hope ignite within her. The weight of neglect that had long overshadowed her came crashing down, replaced by the gentle reminder that even in a world fraught with duty, moments of connection could still pulse with life. With the weight of the night still clinging gently to them, Clara and Eric sat side by side, no longer merely a nurse and a father, but two souls intertwined in the shared experience of resilience and renewal. As the distant sounds of the city faded into a tranquil hum, they understood one quiet truth: sometimes, peace comes not from solving every problem, but from knowing you're not alone in facing them. And in that silence, as the night draped around them, a single, quiet thought lingered in the air, a promise, soft yet steady, they would keep moving forward, together.